by virtue of the principle, the legal principle, caveat emptor, meaning in English from Latin, buyer beware, that you have the responsibility to make sure that you are aware of all and any encumbrance, right, that the property may have, or any liens that may affect title. And the reason for that, as we would have highlighted last week, is that legal title is the right to own land, and without successfully transferring that right, you essentially have none. And even if you would have paid money for the transaction, that is not enough to successfully make the transaction legally binding and to transfer your interest and right from the original owner to you. All right. So that's pretty much where we start off there. And then Lolita reminded us to kindly explain giving someone life interest in property. We will see if we can make room for that. But today, Lolita, we really want to highlight what is the transactional and financial requirements. We looked at the legal requirements of conveyancing last week. We're going into the transaction, the money part. And we have with us the money man in the firm. All right. Mr. McLean is our resident property management and real estate agent and consultant, and he is going to give us a very realistic look at what is to be included in the transaction itself and what needs to happen, what are the requirements. All right, Pay, so let's get straight into it. So we did all these searches, the land appears to be clean, and or you uncovered mortgages or whatever on the lands, but the vendor sorted it out and everything. We spoke about sale agreement last week as well. Walk us through now the transaction itself. What is the transactional requirements first before we go financial in conveyancing? We're not hearing you. We're not hearing you, Mr. McLean. Your mic is... So I think it's the device you're using. The mic on the device perhaps isn't connected. Still not hearing me? No. You may have to not use that. All right, so we await Mr. McLean to get his mic ready. In the meantime, for those of you now joining us, we're talking about conveyancing again this evening, but we're going on part 2 of it. We're talking about the transactional and financial requirements associated with the conveyancing process. We would have done the legal requirements last week, and we're moving swiftly along to the practical application of what is required. And we have with us our resident real estate consultant and realtor at the firm, and he's going to go through with us some of the transactional requirements for conveyancing. All right, we're hearing you now, Mr. McLean. Take the floor.
Okay, great. So when someone is interested in purchasing a property, land or building, one of the first things they'd want to do is do a proper search for title on the property, right? So you would usually make your down payment. And then you'll do a search, right, at your legal person or your attorney or search clerk. You get that search done. And then during that process, you'll have to get certain documents ready. That is, the vendor would have to get certain documents ready on your behalf so that the financial institution can close the transaction. So those documents would be, one, certificate of assessment from either the warden's office or the corporation. It depends on your area or where you are. You would get that document, the certificate of assessment. Also, you would need to get the WASA clearance from the vendor or the person selling. The WASA clearance is also very, very important document that the financial institution would require to close the transaction. So those are the 2 key documents that we're looking at with any transfer or conveyance of property.
Excellent. So, Mr. McLean, you would have identified two important documents there, and for the purpose of those now joining us, we want to really go into those two and repeat it. So, you said certificate of assessment and WASA clearance. Now, whose responsibility it is for the certificate of assessment?
Yes. Just say that again, Ms. Daniel.
The responsibility of getting these documents rests upon who in the transaction, which party?
It rests on the vendor, the seller, or the seller.
Right. So the person selling the land is supposed to provide the person buying the land with the certificate of assessment and WASA clearance. Where are these documents obtained?
Right. So as was mentioned, the certificate of assessment is obtained at the warden's office, or sometimes depending on where the warden's office, it may be at the local Board of Inland Revenue, or sometimes the corporation office. Sometimes these offices are closely linked. So that's where you'll have to check for your area where your certificate of assessment can be had. And then the WASA clearance, of course, will be had from WASA. The WASA clearance usually takes, both documents are valid for roughly 3 months. So you need to carefully time the acquisition of these documents, right?
Excellent.
Carefully time getting them.
Excellent. So for those of us, we're just reiterating to get the information again, requirements from the side of the vendor, the person selling the land. Certificate of assessment can be obtained at the warden's office or BIR office, where in your local ward or area these records are kept, as well as WASA clearance. If you are selling the lands, usually you can find your, in terms of knowing how to reference your certificate of assessment, you're using your assessment number, which is usually found in the top left-hand corner of your WASA bill. You will see your assessment number there, and you use that to indicate at the warden's office the identity of your account so as to obtain a certificate of assessment. All right, to ensure that your lands have been assessed. Now let's look on. So we're moving swiftly along now with the requirements of the purchaser, right, or the buyer, as the layman terms. So we've done the sale agreement. We have the terms and conditions. There's been money placed in escrow. We went through all of that last week, right? What now should the purchaser now be looking to organize as well?
Yeah. So you said the requirements of the purchaser, right?
Yes.
Right. So the purchaser will need to get their clearance from their financial institution that they can be able to afford this property, right? So they will get that document. You go into your mortgage officer, they would sit with you, they would calculate, okay, what is your debt servicing ratio, right? They will look at your credit card, any other loans you have, your salary, your age, a number of factors. So it's no one size fits all, but it really has to do with your personal financial profile. And then they will give you that document stating exactly how much you qualify to borrow. So that's the first thing you should get before going hunting for properties. And oftentimes as agents, we meet clients who are in the market searching and hunting for property, but they have no idea how much they can really afford, right?
Right.
And that's important because it's not a trip to Pennywise or the grocery, right? This is a major investment, right? So before you go looking for a property, it's often best to visit your mortgage officer, your financial institution where your salary goes, to get a clear understanding of how much you can afford before you start looking for a property.
Excellent. So we have some computer noise with you, Mr. McLean, so we'll ask to mute your mic in the meantime as well to help us out. So I think the information was very, very helpful for us, especially, and of course, Mr. McLean was talking about if the purchaser has to utilize the help of a mortgage, which most persons require that because it's no small amount usually to purchase property. And if you require, a mortgage, you need to have that information to know how much you're qualified for, right? And you have your qualifying, your pre-qualification letter. Now, one of the most important documents that the purchaser is also responsible for legally is the title document itself. The preparation and drafting of that document is your responsibility as a person buying the property. You have to carry a sale agreement to your attorneys, let them review it. Once you're signed, now you have to prepare what you want the vendor to sign. Remember, you are asking them to give you their property in accordance to the manner in which is prescribed in the new title document, whether that be a memorandum of transfer if the lands are registered under the RPO, or a deed of conveyance if the lands are registered under the old law system.